Welcome back. I'm going to talk about the principle of Kriya in this video, and those who are in the course that I'm currently teaching, well, at the time of recording this video, we're in the third week of our study together, and with each week we go through one of the elements and we talk about a principle related to each of the elements. And so for this week, the principle related to the element of fire is Kriya. And so I just want to kind of expand on this concept, and hopefully in this video clarify sort of the meaning of the word, where it's coming from, how we can apply this principle in our lives, and use what we know and have received from the traditional teachings of yoga to apply these things in our life for the best results. And so I'm just going to get right in and talk about Kriya. And so many people are familiar with the word karma, and the word karma and Kriya share the same root. The root is kra, which the meaning of kra in Sanskrit is to do or to act. And karma is an action that binds, whereas kriya is an action that liberates. And so in some sense, karma and kriya are opposites. And we see the word kriya in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, particularly in Yoga Sutra 2.1, where he says, Tapas, svadhyaya, ishvara, pranidhana, kriya yoga. And so what he's saying in Sutra 2.1, and each of the sutras, they're like cryptic puzzles, right? Each sutra contains a variety of interpretations and meanings, and it's like a whole universe of teaching is in each of the sutras. And so I'll do my best to interpret how I relate to this sutra, but I also encourage you to go and open your copy of the Yoga Sutras and turn to 2.1, Tapas, svadhyaya, ishvara, pranidhana, kriya yoga. Because, Patanjali is describing in the second pada of the Yoga Sutras. The sutras have 4 padas or parts. And in the second pada, it's known as the sadhana pada. Sadhana meaning the way of attainment, or sometimes translated to mean practice. But sadhana means something that is far more interesting and valuable than just merely practice. And why I feel like that's true is because the actual meaning of the word sadhana, or one of the translations, is the way of attainment. And so then the question is, well, what are we trying to attain? What are we trying to work towards? And what is the purpose or the point of my practice and the practices I do? And, according to the path of yoga and the science of yoga, yoga is a methodology that describes both the process and the final goal of attaining union, attaining a state of indivisibility, a state of non-separateness. And why this is important and why this is considered the ultimate goal of the spiritual path is, as an individual, I am in relationship to my environment, I'm in relationship to my friends, my family, but I'm also in relationship to myself, and I'm in relationship to my creator. I'm in relationship to the spiritual force inside of me that compels me to do, and compels me to act, and compels me to live. And as I had said, the goal of yoga is this final state of yoga, which is union or non-separation. And yoga also describes the process and the steps leading up to that state. And when we look at our, our spiritual path, or our path of development, our path of growth, our path of transformation, I think it's wise to investigate or contemplate and reflect on, where is this path leading me, and what are the results of my path, and am I achieving those results, right? Am I moving towards a place of less division? Am I moving towards a place of less separation in my mind? And why that's important to look at that is because it's the separation in the mind that creates conflict, right? There's oftentimes in myself, there are conflicting agendas, right? There's conflicting ideas, there's conflicting, my nature, our nature is a lot of it has to do with being in conflict. And we look around the world and this is happening all over. And why I'm just giving a context behind that is because when we look at Kriya as an action that liberates energy versus Karma, an action that creates bondage, Karma, it also refers to what I call the psychic residue, sort of the accumulation of material from our past and also from our ancestry that we inherit or that we accumulate in this life that causes us to repeat the same action, karma. And the repetition of the past actually is what prevents the future from manifesting. And right, the future is really a concept. And I think that, as I move in the direction of my future, if I'm just repeating the past and things are staying the same, then it's not really a future. You see, this is where the mystical teachings of the nature of time and the non-linearity of time are really sort of fascinating to contemplate on. But my, inspiration with spirituality is to learn about creation, to learn how to generate energy to create a better future for myself, or to create an actual future for myself, one that is different from the past. And so this is where Kriya comes in. Kriya is a principle. There's also activities that we call Kriyas. Some of you are familiar with things like the double breathing Kriya or Kapalabhati Kriya or Bhastrika Kriya. And these activities are particularly chosen to liberate and to purify the energy that is stuck in the system, with the idea that energy, when it's liberated, can then move in a positive direction. And so in a way they're rituals, right? Like if I sit down to do Kriya and I do a set of Kriyas to purify myself, it's like a ritual to free myself from any of the energy that's sort of accrued or accumulated from my day, from my week, from my month, from my year, from my life, from lifetimes. And that accumulation, or that liberation of that energy that is accumulated, then frees up energy to flow. And so, this is a bit of a kind of a big overview, but just to look at it from the sense like, why is this connected to the element of fire? Well, fire is transformation, right? Symbolic of transformation. It burns things and changes them from one state to another. And so through Kriyas, I can burn or, incinerate, there's a good word, incinerate the material of my past to turn it into ash as a sort of universal fertilizer for what is to come. And the last thing I'll say is just to kind of touch on what Patanjali was talking about, why he uses the word tapas, svadhyaya, and ishvara pranidhana to describe what Kriya Yoga is. Tapas refers to the heat of effort. It's sort of it's seen as, tapasya is sort of the accumulation of purification that is the result of our effort, tapasya. And tapas, specifically, that word refers to the heat that's generated in practice that then purifies. And so it's like a friction. You see what I mean? Like as soon as I turn my attention away from the temptation of the things that want me to continue repeating the past, just think about that, habits, patterns, addictions, what have you. If I turn my attention away from those patterns and the temptation to engage in them, there's a friction, because part of my identity is wrapped up in continuing that thing. But if I sever that connection, there's friction, and that's felt in the body. It's like there's like a burn that happens. Svadhyaya, the second word that Patanjali uses, self-study, self-observation, to observe myself and to pay attention. It's like to really become aware. What am I doing? Am I actually doing something that is in alignment with my highest wish, my highest self? Or am I doing something out of habit or out of pattern, out of a repeat of the past? It's what I had to observe myself. And then lastly, we have ishvara pranidhana. This is a really, really, I think, important one for anybody on the spiritual path. It refers to surrender to the Supreme, right? This idea of, this is actually a devotional activity to perform an evolutionary action, an action that frees me from the past. There's a quality of devotion that comes with that. And this is why I think that Patanjali used the word surrender. We have to surrender, ultimately, our ego and the selfish desires that come from the ego, and surrender that to the fire of the Supreme. Surrender that over to the Most High. And the word they use for Most High is ishvara, as the Supreme Lord. And so, right, the effort, the tapas, the self-study, and the surrender, all of these things together comprise what we call Kriya Yoga, as the activity, the evolutionary activity that leads us to a state of indivisibility, to a state of yoga. And so that's just a little bit about Kriya in the context of Kriya. And in practice, specifically those who are practicing this week in the course, but anybody who's practicing, how to really work with this principle, the way that I have found to be helpful is right effort. Okay, the right amount of effort, the right amount of energy, not too much, not too little. It's like, also another way to put it is skillful effort. And this puts us in the right relationship to power, the right relationship to this transformative element of fire. And having the right effort or skillful effort requires us to be self-aware, svadhyaya. It requires a certain amount of tapas, and it requires a certain amount of surrender, because there's tendencies, tendencies that have accumulated, conditioning in the mind, attitudes where we feel like we need to force, we need to strain, we need to fight, we need to be in conflict. On the other hand, we give up, or we become passive, or we just become loose, right? And so this is why I think I like having this principle third in the list, because we went through the firmness and the stability through sthira, sukham, the ease or the flow, the relaxation, and now we come to right effort, kriya, this very intentional and skillful use of the element of fire. So that's all I have to share with you guys today. I hope this is helpful and inspiring, and I'll see you soon for another video.